The hammer struck 3 times. Each blow echoed across the valley like a judge's gavel sealing a man's fate. Sam Bridger stood 10 feet from his barn door, watching Caldwell's clerk nail the foreclosure notice into the weathered wood. The paper was crisp, official, black ink on white stock. The wax seal at the bottom was still warm, red as fresh blood in the midday sun. $2,000, the clerk said, not meeting Sam's eyes. 30 days. The man climbed back onto his horse and rode south without another word. Dust rose behind him, then settled. The notice fluttered once in the hot breeze, then hung still. Sam's hands trembled as he walked to the barn. He touched the edge of the paper. The ink smelled like the end of everything. 8 years of work, 8 years of surviving alone after Rebecca died. All of it reduced to a debt he couldn't pay and a deadline he couldn't meet. The cattle in the corral watched him with dark, patient eyes. They didn't understand shame. They only understood thirst. From somewhere above, metal groaned against metal, a sound Sam had been dreading for weeks. He looked up at the windmill. The vanes shuddered once, twice, then stopped completely. Sam woke before dawn the next morning, same as he had for 30 years. His body didn't care that the ranch was dying. It still pulled him from the cot at the same hour, still sent him out into the cold dark to check the animals and tend the land. The ladder to the windmill was slick with morning dew. His boots found the rungs by memory more than sight. Rust flaked under his palms as he climbed, staining his skin orange-brown. At the top, he opened the gear housing and smelled the burned metal before he saw it. The main gear teeth were stripped clean, ground down to nubs. Without those teeth, the wind couldn't turn the vanes. Without the vanes turning, the pump sat idle. Without the pump, the well might as well be dry. Sam ran the numbers in his head. 3 weeks of water left in the reserve tank. Maybe 4 if he rationed the cattle down to bare minimum. After that, he'd have to drive them 20 miles south to Murphy's place and sell them for whatever the man offered, which wouldn't be $2,000, wouldn't even be half that. He climbed down slow, feeling every one of his 58 years in his knees and shoulders. The sun was just breaking over the eastern ridge, turning the scrub grass gold. It was the kind of morning Rebecca used to love. She'd stand on the porch with her coffee and say the light made everything look like it was worth saving. Sam didn't drink coffee anymore. It seemed wasteful when you were drinking alone. He walked the fence line, out of habit, checking posts that didn't need checking. The work kept his hands busy, and his mind from circling the same dark thought over and over. 30 days wasn't enough time. Not to fix the windmill, not to earn $2,000, not to find a miracle. The sound reached him when he was 50 yards from the house. Breathing, ragged and wet like someone drowning on dry land. He stopped walking, listened. The sound came again, faint but unmistakable, human, coming from the direction of the stone well. Sam's hand went to the knife at his belt. He approached careful, boots quiet on the hard-packed earth. The well sat in a small clearing where the grass had been trampled flat by years of cattle and horses drinking from the trough. Morning light slanted across the stones. A woman was collapsed against the wooden fence, half hidden in shadow. Sam had seen plenty of death in his life, knew the look of it. This woman wasn't dead yet, but she was working on it. Her lips were cracked white, split in place where the skin had given up. Dark hair matted with dirt and blood hung across her face. She wore deerskin and beadwork that marked her as Apache. She was also the tallest woman Sam had ever seen. Even collapsed, even dying, her frame stretched long and powerful. 6 feet easy, maybe more. Her right hand clutched something against her chest. Parchment. Old yellowed paper rolled tight. Sam knelt beside her. The smell of sweat and sage and something else, fever, rose from her skin. He touched her shoulder, gentle. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened, dark, unfocused. They found his face and held there. Sam reached for the ladle hanging by the well, drew up a bucket of water. The rope creaked through the pulley. The water was cold, clean. He brought the ladle to her lips. She drank, 3 times. Her throat worked hard, swallowing like it hurt. When she was done, she looked at him again. Something had changed in her eyes. Not gratitude, not suspicion. Something else, like she was memorizing his face, filing it away for later. Her hand loosened on the parchment. Sam caught a glimpse of faded ink, careful script, a date that made no sense. 1752. "Easy," Sam said. "You're safe." Her mouth moved. The word came out barely louder than breath. Fraud. Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp against the fence. Sam caught her before she fell sideways. Her weight was solid, real. She was burning up, fever cooking her from the inside. He needed to get her into the shade, needed to cool her down, needed to figure out who she was and why she'd collapsed at his well with a piece of paper older than the United States itself. But mostly he needed to understand what she'd meant by that one word, spoken like a warning or a confession or both. The parchment slipped from her hand and landed in the dust at his feet. Sam carried her into the cabin and laid her on his cot. The fever was worse than he'd thought. Her skin felt like sun-baked stone. He fetched water from the reserve tank, tore strips from an old shirt, and spent the next hour cooling her down. The cloth came away brown with dust and darker stains he didn't want to think about. She'd been walking a long time, running maybe. By mid-morning she was breathing easier. Sam set a pot of broth on the stove, just beef bones and salt, nothing fancy, and waited. The cabin smelled like wood smoke and sickness and something herbal he couldn't name. Maybe sage from her clothes. Maybe something else. The parchment sat on the table where he'd placed it. Sam kept glancing at it, but didn't touch. It wasn't his to read. Around noon, hoofbeats approached from the south. Sam stepped onto the porch and recognized Murphy's roan before the man came into full view. Murphy was his nearest neighbor, 10 miles south by Rough Trail. Good man. Kept to himself mostly, which suited Sam fine. "Saw smoke from your chimney in the middle of the day," Murphy said, not dismounting. "Figured I'd check." "Appreciated," Sam said. Murphy's eyes went to the barn door. The foreclosure notice was visible even from horseback. "That what I think it is?" "It is. Damn shame." Murphy shifted in his saddle. "Caldwell's been buying up a lot of land lately. Seems to find reasons to foreclose on folks right when the railroad survey crews come through." And Sam filed that information away. "You hear anything about Apache moving through the area?" Murphy's expression changed. "Why? You see sign?" "Found someone," Sam said carefully. "Gave her water. She's resting now." "On her?" Murphy leaned forward. "Sam, you harboring an Apache woman in there?" "I'm helping a person who is dying of thirst." That's a good way to get yourself killed when her people come looking." "I'll take that chance." Murphy studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, slow. "Your choice. But I'd keep a rifle close if I were you." He turned his horse. "And Sam, watch yourself with Caldwell. Man's gotten mean since his bank took on those railroad investors." Sam watched Murphy ride south until the dust settled. Then he went back inside. The woman's eyes were open. She was looking at the ceiling beams, breathing steady now. When Sam approached, she turned her head toward him. "You're awake," he said. "You gave me water." Her English was accented but clear. She'd learned it somewhere proper. Mission school, maybe. "You needed it." She sat up slow, testing her strength. Her height was even more striking now. Sitting on the cot, her head was nearly level with Sam's standing. "My name is Tyanita," she said. "It means beautiful." "Sam Bridger." "I know." She nodded toward the parchment on the table. "I have been watching your ranch for 3 days, studying the boundary stones, your well, the land." Sam felt something cold settle in his chest. "Why?" "Because I am researching theft." And her eyes were sharp, intelligent. "Spanish land grants, old boundaries, places where white men moved markers and claimed what was never theirs to take. And you think I'm one of those men?" "No." She stood, testing her legs. They held. "I think you are a victim, same as my people." Sam handed her the cup of broth. She took it, drank. The smell of it filled the small cabin, salt and bone and heat. "That paper you were carrying," Sam said. "A Spanish land grant from 1752. It describes this territory, the water rights, the boundaries." She set the cup down. "The land your ranch sits on was never American land to sell. The Spanish gave it to Apache ancestors in trade treaty. Then Mexico claimed it. Then America stole it from Mexico. But no one asked the original agreement holders. That doesn't change the deed I bought?" "No," Tyanita said. "But it changes everything else." Before Sam could ask what she meant, her hand shot out and gripped his wrist. Her fingers were hot, strong. "The banker who is taking your land," she said. "Caldwell. He is stealing from you, too. The same way he has stolen from 12 others, moving boundary markers, paying surveyors to lie." The cold in Sam's chest spread. "How do you know that?" "Because I have been researching." Her grip tightened. "And because he is—" Hoofbeats again. "But not from the south this time? From the east?" Moving fast, Tyanita's whole body went rigid. "Hide me." "What?" "If they see me here, you will die with me." She moved toward the back corner of the cabin, where Sam kept his root cellar trapdoor. "Please." Sam heard the authority in her voice, heard the fear underneath it. He pulled up the door, and she dropped down into the dark space below. He lowered the door, kicked his rug over it, and stepped onto the porch just as 3 horses pulled up in his yard. Hiram Caldwell dismounted first. He was dressed like a man heading to church. Clean suit, polished boots, hat brushed free of dust. 2 men stayed mounted behind him. One wore a surveyor's vest, the other just looked mean. "Sam," Caldwell said, walking forward with his hand extended. Sam didn't take it. Caldwell lowered his hand, smiling like he'd expected that. "I wanted to come by personally, discuss your situation." "Not much to discuss. You want $2,000 I don't have." "That's not entirely true." Caldwell pulled a rolled paper from his jacket. I've been reviewing the property survey. Turns out there's been an error, a significant one. He walked to the porch table and spread the map out. His finger traced a line that ran straight through Sam's land. See this boundary marker? The surveyor made a mistake when your deed was drawn up. The actual property line is here. His finger moved. About 200 yards east of where you thought it was. Sam stared at the map, at the line, at where Caldwell's finger rested. That's where my well is, Sam said quietly. Exactly. Caldwell looked up. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Your well sits on my land, Sam. Has been for 8 years, which means every drop of water you've pulled has been trespassing. The surveyor behind him nodded, solemn, professional. Sam's hands curled into fists. That's a lie. It's a legal survey, signed and recorded. Caldwell rolled the map back up. Now I'm willing to be reasonable. You can sign over the deed to me today, clear your debt, and I'll let you stay on as a tenant. $100 a year rent, water rights included. Or I foreclose in 30 days, evict you for illegal well usage, and you leave with nothing but what you can carry. Caldwell tucked the map back into his jacket. It's your choice, Sam, but the law's on my side. He turned and walked back to his horse, mounted smooth, like a man who'd won before the fight even started. I'll give you 3 days to decide, Caldwell called over his shoulder. After that, the offer's off the table. They rode east toward town. Sam stood on his porch until the dust settled and the silence came back. Then he heard it, the soft creak of the root cellar door lifting. Tyanita climbed out slow, her face grim. Now you see, she said. The banker does not just steal. He makes the law say his theft is legal. Tyanita moved to the table and picked up the parchment. Her fingers were reverent, careful. The paper crackled as she unrolled it flat. I need light, she said. Sam lit the lamp, though it was still afternoon. The flame steadied and threw warm light across the table. Tyanita bent over the document, her lips moving as she read the faded Spanish script. This was written by a Franciscan priest, she said, Father Ignacio de la Cruz. He mediated a water treaty between Spanish settlers and Apache leaders in 1752. Her finger traced the flowing script. Sam could see the care that had gone into the writing. Every letter precise, official. The treaty grants Apache people permanent water rights to 3 springs and 2 wells in this territory. In exchange, Spanish settlers receive safe passage and trade agreements. She looked up at Sam. The boundaries are described in detail. Stone markers, natural features, distance from landmarks. What landmarks? Tyanita turned the parchment so Sam could see, though the Spanish meant nothing to him. 3 cottonwood trees, a red rock formation shaped like a sleeping bear, and a spring that feeds underground to surface here. She tapped the paper. Your well, Sam Bridger. It is one of the 2 wells named in the treaty. Sam felt something shift in his understanding. So the Apache have legal claim to my water. No, Tyanita's voice was firm. The treaty says the water belongs to both peoples, shared. No one owns what flows from the earth. She rolled the parchment carefully and set it aside. Then she pulled a small leather journal from inside her deerskin shirt. The pages were filled with sketches, notes in English and Apache, copied survey maps. I have been studying at the mission school for 3 years, she said, learning to read legal documents, property deeds, land grants. Because my father, my people, we know the white men are stealing, but we cannot fight what we cannot prove. So you became a researcher. I became a weapon. Her smile was thin. Knowledge is the only weapon they cannot take from us. She opened the journal to a page marked with a strip of leather. I have documented 12 properties in this territory where boundary markers were moved. Always the same surveyor. Always resulting in foreclosure by the same bank. Always purchased by the same railroad investors. Caldwell. Yes, she met his eyes. He is not just taking your land, he is taking everyone's land. Building an empire on fraud and calling it legal. Sam sat down heavy. The chair creaked under his weight. Outside, a crow called from somewhere near the barn. The sound was sharp, lonely. Even if we could prove it, Sam said, who would listen? My deed is legal. His deed is legal? Spanish treaties don't mean much to an American court. They do, if we can show the fraud. Tyanita closed her journal. The Spanish grant gives us standing to challenge the survey. If the original boundaries can be proven, then Caldwell's survey is void. Can they be proven? Yes. She stood. The stones are still there, buried, hidden by time and dirt and men who wanted them forgotten. But they exist. Sam looked at her, really looked. She was young, 19, maybe 20, but her eyes were older, hard with purpose. She'd been fighting this battle longer than he'd known it existed. Why help me? He asked. Because you gave me water when you did not have to. Because you are one of the few white men who did not see Apache first and human second. She paused. And because if we prove the fraud here, we prove it everywhere. 12 families get their land back. My people get acknowledgement of the treaty. And Caldwell loses everything. That's a lot of hoping. Hope is all we have. Sam stood. His knees protested but held. Where do we start? The fence line, Tyanita said. 300 paces east of your well. There should be a boundary stone. Buried now, but placed by Spanish surveyors to mark the treaty line. They walked out together into the afternoon heat. The sun was past its peak, but still brutal. Sweat started down Sam's back before they'd gone 50 yards. Tyanita counted paces, her stride long and sure. Sam followed with the shovel he'd grabbed from the barn. The metal rang against his shoulder with each step. At 300 paces, she stopped, knelt, ran her hands over the earth like she could read it. Here, she said. Sam started digging. The ground was hard, baked by years of drought. The shovel bit shallow, turning up dust and small rocks. Sweat stung his eyes, his shoulders burned, but he kept digging. 2 feet down, the shovel struck something solid. Not rock, different. He cleared the dirt away, careful. Tyanita dropped to her knees beside him, using her hands to sweep the remaining earth aside. The stone was rectangular, limestone, weathered but intact. And carved into its face, deep enough that time hadn't erased it, was a cross. Beneath the cross, numbers, 1752. Tyanita's breath caught. She touched the stone like it was sacred. Maybe it was. This proves the boundary, she whispered. This proves someone put a stone here 124 years ago, Sam said. That's not the same as proving Caldwell moved his markers. No, but it is a start. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. Her eyes scanned the horizon, east toward the ridgeline, north toward the hills. What? Sam asked. My father will come, she said. Her voice had changed, gone quiet, intense. He does not know where I am, does not know if I am alive or dead. When he finds out I was here, on white man's land, drinking white man's water, she looked at Sam, he will not know if you are friend or thief. How many will he bring? Tyanita's jaw tightened. All of them. Sam woke to drums, low, rhythmic, distant enough that for a moment he thought he was dreaming. Then he heard them again, clearer this time, coming from the north ridge. He sat up on the floor where he'd been sleeping. Tyanita had taken the cot. The cabin was still dark. No hint of dawn yet, just the drums and his pulse matching their beat. Tyanita was already awake, already dressed. She stood by the window, her silhouette tall against the faint starlight. They are here, she said. Sam pulled on his boots, grabbed his rifle. His hands shook, loading it. How many? You will see. He followed her onto the porch. The air was cold, sharp. His breath came out in clouds. The drums were louder now, joined by others, east, south, west. Surrounding him, the first light of dawn broke over the eastern ridge. And Sam saw them. Warriors on horseback lined every high point around his ranch. Not dozens, hundreds. They sat motionless, rifles across their laps, spears upright, war paint visible even at distance. The horse's breath rose in white plumes. Sam's throat went dry. He'd heard stories, knew what Apache warriors could do when they wanted blood, knew that no white man survived this kind of siege. He counted, stopped counting, started again, gave up. 300, Tyanita said quietly. Maybe more. The drums kept their slow, steady rhythm, a heartbeat, patient, inevitable. Sam looked at the woman beside him. What do they want? To see if you are the man I told them you were. She stepped off the porch. Or the man they expect you to be? Wait. But she was already walking toward the center of the yard. Her height made her visible even in the dim light. She raised both arms above her head. The drums stopped. The silence was worse than the sound had been. Then from the northern ridge, a single rider descended, slow, deliberate. The horse picked its way down the rocky slope with the precision of an animal that had made this kind of approach 1,000 times. Sam's finger found the trigger guard of his rifle. Didn't pull it. Didn't raise the weapon, just held it loose, waiting. The rider reached the valley floor and continued toward them. 50 yards, 40, 30. He stopped 20 feet from where Tyanita stood. The man was older, his face lined deep with sun and wind, and something harder, command. Gray streaked his long black hair. He wore no war paint, but authority radiated from him like heat from stone. Behind him, more riders appeared. 12, 2 dozen, flanking, watching. The old warrior raised one hand, held it there, waiting. Sam's heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to shoot, to do something, but he just stood there, watching. Tyanita walked forward, 10 paces. The old warrior dismounted. They stood facing each other. Then Tyanita spoke in Apache. Fast, urgent, her hands moving as she talked. The old warrior listened without expression. When she finished, he turned his head and looked directly at Sam. His eyes were black, unreadable. He called out something in Apache, sharp, commanding. Movement rippled through the warriors on the ridges. They shifted positions, creating a gap on the eastern slope. Through that gap, 4 warriors rode down. They carried something between them, large, awkward. When they reached the valley floor, Sam could see what it was. Maps, rolls of them, and something else. Papers bound in leather, an official-looking ledger. The warriors dismounted and spread the maps on the ground in front of the old warrior. Tyanita knelt beside them. The old warrior spoke again, and she looked up at Sam. "Come," she called in English. "You must see." Sam walked forward. His legs felt wooden. The rifle hung useless in his hand. When he reached the maps, Tyanita gestured for him to kneel. "This is my father," she said. "Chief Naiche. He leads our people." Sam looked at the old warrior, understood now why 300 men followed him. "He does not speak English," Tyanita continued, "so I will translate. But first, you must see what we have brought." She unrolled the first map. It was a surveyor's field document, official stamps, careful measurements, dated 2 years ago. "This is the original survey of your property," Tyanita said. Her finger traced a boundary line. "See here? The markers placed by the surveyor when your deed was drawn. The well is inside your boundary, 150 yards inside." She unrolled the second map, laid it beside the first. "This is the survey Caldwell showed you yesterday. See the difference?" Sam saw it. The boundary line had moved. East, exactly 200 yards. "They are the same surveyor's maps," Tyanita said. "Same signature, same official seal. But someone changed the measurements, moved the line, made your well appear outside your land." She opened the leather ledger. The pages were filled with entries. Dates, names, amounts. "We took this from the land office 3 nights ago," Tyanita said. "My father's warriors. They move in darkness better than any white man can see." Sam looked at the entries, recognized some of the names. Neighbors, men he'd known, all foreclosed, all within the last 3 years. And beside each name, the same notation. Survey adjustment, E. Knott, fee, $50. "Elias Knott," Sam said. "The surveyor." "Yes." Tyanita's voice was hard. "Caldwell pays him $50 for each property he steals. 12 properties in 3 years. Your land would be the 13th. Chief Naiche spoke. His voice was low, measured. Tyanita translated. "My father says we did not come to kill you. We came to see if you were like the others, if you would run to the town and bring soldiers, if you would try to hide my presence and collect reward money." She paused. "You did none of these things. You gave water because I was thirsty. You gave shelter because I was sick. You asked nothing in return." The chief spoke again, longer this time. "He says the banker is stealing from both our peoples. From you, he steals land. From us, he steals water rights and claims them for the railroad. He makes the earth something that can be owned, when the earth belongs to no one." Tyanita looked at Sam. "My father asks, will you stand with us against this thief? Or will you stand with your own people and let the stealing continue?" Sam looked at the maps, at the ledger, at 300 warriors watching from the ridges, waiting for his answer. He thought about Caldwell's smile yesterday, about the easy way he'd lied, about 12 other families who'd lost everything to the same fraud. "I'll stand for the truth," Sam said, "whatever that costs me." Tyanita translated. The chief listened, then nodded once. He reached into a pouch at his belt and pulled out something wrapped in soft leather, unwrapped it slow. A necklace, intricate beadwork, blue and white patterns on tanned hide. Chief Naiche stepped forward, placed the necklace over Sam's head. The beadwork settled against his chest, warm from being carried close to the chief's body. The old warrior spoke one more time, brief, final. "You are under our protection now," Tyanita translated. "But you must understand, when white men see this, they will call you traitor. They will turn against you. The choice you make today, you cannot unmake." Sam touched the beadwork, felt the careful stitching. Someone had spent hours making this, making it beautiful. "I understand," he said. Chief Naiche moved to the stone well. The warriors remained on the ridges, watching, silent witnesses to whatever was about to happen. The chief spoke to Tyanita. She translated for Sam. "My father will perform the water ceremony. It is sacred to our people. It acknowledges that water is life, and life must be shared freely." Naiche drew up the bucket. The rope creaked through the wooden pulley, the sound carrying in the still morning air. He lifted the bucket and poured water slowly onto the earth at the base of the well. The ground darkened, drinking it in. Then he filled the ladle and offered it to Sam. Sam took it. The metal was cold in his palm. He drank. The water tasted clean, pure, like it had tasted every day for 8 years. Like it had tasted for centuries before he ever put a fence around it. The chief took the ladle back and drank from it himself. Then he spoke, long, formal words that had the weight of ritual behind them. "He names you," Tyanita said. Her voice had gone soft. In our language, you are now tu dee daltsosi. It means he who shares water. It is an honored name, a name given to those who understand that some things cannot be owned. Sam felt the weight of it settle on him alongside the necklace. A new identity, a bridge between worlds. The chief placed one hand briefly on Sam's shoulder, not quite a clasp, more like a blessing. Then he turned and walked back to his horse. We will watch, Tyanita said. My father's warriors will remain on the ridges. If Caldwell or his men come, we will know. If you need help, light a fire at midday, we will come. How long will they stay? Until this is finished. She looked toward the eastern ridge, where dawn was spreading gold and pink across the sky. One way or another. The warriors began pulling back, not leaving, just withdrawing to positions less visible, becoming part of the landscape again. Sam watched them disappear into the hills like smoke dispersing. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, only Tyanita remained. You should rest, Sam said. That fever might come back. I am stronger than you think. But she swayed slightly when she said it. Strong enough to be foolish isn't the same as healed. Sam gestured toward the cabin. At least eat something. She didn't argue. They went inside and Sam heated the rest of yesterday's broth. The smell of it filled the cabin, beef and salt and the faint bitterness of the iron pot. Tyanita ate slowly, her movements deliberate, conserving strength. The surveyor, she said between bites. Elias Knott, do you know him? Met him once, when I bought this place. He seemed honest enough. Honest men do not forge documents for $50. Tyanita set down her cup. But scared men do. Men with pressure on them. Sam thought about that, about the notation in the ledger. 12 properties, 12 $50 payments, $600 total, not enough to make a man rich. Just enough to keep him fed if he had mouths to feed and bills to pay. You think he's weak, Sam said. I think he is the crack in Caldwell's wall. Her eyes were sharp again, focused. If we can make him speak truth, everything falls apart. Before Sam could respond, hoofbeats approached, fast, nervous. Sam grabbed his rifle and stepped onto the porch. Tyanita stayed inside, watching through the window. The rider who pulled up was younger than Sam expected. Maybe 40, thin, wearing a surveyor's vest with pockets full of measuring tools. His horse was lathered, breathing hard. Elias Knott. Mr. Bridger, he called out, not dismounting. His voice was tight, high with fear. Knott, I need to speak with you. The surveyor's eyes darted toward the ridges, toward the cabin, toward anywhere but Sam's face. Alone. We're alone enough? Knott licked his lips. His hands gripped the reins so tight his knuckles showed white. I heard there's talk in town. They're saying you've been harboring an Apache woman, saying you've sided with them against your own people. What I do on my land is my business. It's not your land. The words came out strangled. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Caldwell's survey is legal, properly filed. If you fight him on this, you'll lose everything. And if you're connected to Apache raiders when you lose, raiders? Sam's voice went cold. Those warriors on the ridges haven't raided anyone. They're watching, waiting. There's a difference. Not to the men in town, there isn't. Knott finally looked at him. His eyes were wet, desperate. Please, just sign the deed over, take whatever deal Caldwell offers, walk away. And let him steal from me the same way he's stolen from 12 other families. Knott flinched like he'd been slapped. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Sam stepped off the porch, walked closer. You signed every one of those surveys, moved boundaries, got paid $50 each time. I've seen the ledger, Knott. The surveyor's face went pale, then red. That's not... You can't prove... He stopped, started again. Caldwell will ruin you if you accuse him. He has connections, railroad money, judges in his pocket. Maybe, but he doesn't have the truth. The truth doesn't matter. Knott's voice cracked. I have a wife, 3 children. Caldwell said if I didn't help him, he'd foreclose on my house. Said he'd make sure I never got surveying work again in this territory. He was shaking now. What was I supposed to do? Let my family starve? Sam heard the anguish in the man's voice, heard the years of compromise and shame. This wasn't a villain. This was just a man who'd made bad choices when cornered. You could tell the truth now, Sam said quietly. Before more families lose their homes? I can't. Knott pulled his horse around. And neither can you. Caldwell's coming for you, Bridger. Coming with lawyers and federal marshals if he has to. You can't win this fight. Maybe not, but I can make him bleed for every inch. Knott stared at him, then shook his head. You're a fool. He kicked his horse into motion. A dead fool. He rode east toward town, dust rising behind him. Sam stood in his yard, the beaded necklace visible against his shirt. and watched the surveyor disappear. Inside the cabin, Tyanita appeared at the window. "He is afraid," she said. "Yeah. Fear makes men do terrible things?" She paused. "But sometimes it makes them do brave things too." Sam touched the necklace, felt the weight of the choice he'd made. The choice he'd have to keep making every day until this was finished. From somewhere on the northern ridge, a hawk called, sharp, clear. The warriors were still watching. 2 days passed. The warriors remained on the ridges, visible at dawn and dusk, invisible during the heat of the day. Sam worked his ranch, rationing the reserve water, watching the cattle lose weight. The windmill stood silent overhead, its broken gears a constant reminder of time running out. On the third morning, he saddled his horse and rode to town. The ride took 2 hours. The trail wound through scrub and red rock formations, following the path settlers had worn over the years. Sam had made this trip 100 times. It had never felt hostile before. The town sat in a shallow basin where 3 trails met, 24 buildings clustered around a main street. General store, saloon, blacksmith, church at the north end with its white-painted steeple catching the sun. Sam tied his horse outside the general store. The wood of the hitching post was smooth from years of rains rubbing against it. He could smell dust and horse manure and the faint sweetness of hay from the livery stable across the street. The store's front door was open. Sam stepped inside. The storekeeper, a man named Henderson, looked up from his counter. His face went carefully blank. "Sam, need supplies, flour, coffee, salt if you've got it." Henderson didn't move. "Heard you've been keeping company with Apache." "Heard a lot of things lately, most of them wrong." That necklace you're wearing says different." Sam had forgotten about the beadwork. It hung visible over his shirt, blue and white against the faded cotton. He didn't reach up to touch it, didn't hide it. "I helped someone who needed help," Sam said. "That bother you?" "It bothers a lot of folks." Henderson crossed his arms. "Caldwell's been telling everyone you're a traitor, saying you're working with Apache to sabotage the railroad survey. Half the town thinks you should be arrested." "And the other half?" Henderson shrugged. "Ain't sure yet. But I can't sell to you, Sam. Not till this gets sorted. Bad for business." Sam felt the words land like a fist to his gut, but he kept his voice level. "I've been buying from you for 8 years, and I appreciated the business, but I got a store to run. A family to feed?" Henderson looked away. "I'm sorry." Sam turned and walked out. The sunlight felt too bright after the dimness of the store. His hands wanted to shake, but he wouldn't let them. Murphy was standing by Sam's horse. The older man's face was grim. "Word travels fast," Murphy said. "Apparently. Tried the blacksmith yet?" "No." "Don't bother. He won't serve you either, nor the feed store." Murphy pulled a wrapped package from his saddlebag. "Brought you some supplies, flour and coffee. Not much, but it'll last a week or so." Sam took the package. The weight of it was solid, real. "I can't ask you to. You didn't ask." Murphy's voice was firm. "And I'll keep bringing supplies as long as you need them. Don't care what the town says." Footsteps approached. Sam turned and saw the preacher coming down the church steps. Reverend Thomas was in his 60s, white-haired, thin as a rail. He walked with purpose. "Samuel Bridger," he called out. "A word." Sam waited. The preacher stopped in front of him and looked him up and down. His eyes lingered on the necklace. "I heard what Henderson did," Thomas said. "It's shameful. A man gives water to someone dying of thirst and gets crucified for it." He raised his voice so it carried down the street. "Seems to me that's what Christ did too, and they crucified him for it." A few people had stopped to watch, the storekeeper in his doorway, 2 women near the livery, a man outside the saloon. "The good book says we're supposed to help strangers," Thomas continued. "Says we're supposed to give water to the thirsty. Doesn't say we should check their bloodline first." Careful, preacher," someone called from the saloon. "That kind of talk makes you sound like an Apache lover too." Thomas turned toward the voice. "I'm a Christ lover, and if that means loving my neighbor, regardless of what they look like, then so be it." The saloon door swung open and the owner stepped out. Big man named Crawford, red-faced and mean. "That neighbor's people killed my brother in a raid 5 years ago. Don't tell me about loving them." "I'm sorry for your loss," Thomas said. "But punishing a man for an act of mercy doesn't bring your brother back." "No, but hanging traitors might prevent the next raid." The word hung in the air. Traitor. Sam felt eyes on him from every direction, from windows, from doorways, from the people who'd stopped in the street to watch. Murphy stepped closer to Sam, a quiet gesture of solidarity. "Sam Bridger's no traitor," Murphy said. "He's a decent man trying to survive. Same as all of us." Decent men don't wear Apache beads," Crawford spat. "Decent men also don't spread lies about boundary markers," Sam said quietly. The street went silent. Crawford's face darkened. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Sam kept his voice level. Caldwell's been moving survey stakes, foreclosing on properties that should never have been his. 12 families so far. I've seen the proof. That's a serious accusation, Crawford said. It's the truth. You got evidence? Yes. Crawford laughed, hard, mean. Then you're more foolish than I thought. Caldwell owns half the territory, got judges and railroad investors backing him. You think anyone's going to believe a man who sides with savages over his own people? Sam didn't answer. Couldn't, because Crawford wasn't wrong. The truth didn't matter if no one would listen. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted the standoff. A single rider coming from the south, not fast, not urgent, just steady, confident. The man who rode up was older than Sam, late 60s. He wore a black suit and a silver star pinned to his vest. His face was weathered but sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Judge Harlan Webb, circuit judge for the territory. He dismounted slow, tied his horse next to Sam's, looked around at the gathered crowd. Quite a welcoming committee, Webb said. His voice was dry, amused. Judge, Crawford said, this man's been... I know what he's been accused of. Webb cut him off. And I know what Hiram Caldwell's been doing too. That's why I'm here. He looked at Sam. Mr. Bridger, I'd like to have a conversation with you. Privately. Sam nodded. My ranch is 2 hours north. I know where it is. Webb turned to the crowd. Rest of you, go about your business. There's nothing to see here. He mounted his horse and gestured for Sam to lead the way. They rode north together, Murphy following behind. The town watched them go. Sam could feel the stares, feel the judgment, feel the line being drawn. By the time they reached the ranch, the sun was high. The reserve water tank cast a short shadow. The windmill stood silent against the blue sky. Anita stepped onto the porch as they approached. She'd been waiting, watching. Webb dismounted and studied her, took in her height, her bearing, the intelligence in her eyes. Miss, he said with a slight nod. Judge Webb. Her English was formal, careful. You know me? I know your reputation. They say you are one of the few honest judges in the territory. They say that because I've sent enough dishonest men to prison? He looked at Sam. Let's talk inside. They gathered around Sam's table. The three of them and Murphy, who refused to leave. Webb spread his hands flat on the wood. I've been investigating Hiram Caldwell for 6 months, he said, quiet-like. Following patterns. And I'll be straight with you. I don't have enough to arrest him yet. But I'm close. How close? Sam asked. Close enough to know he's been bribing surveyors. Close enough to know he's foreclosed on properties using fraudulent boundary adjustments. But I need proof, documentation, something that shows a pattern I can present to a federal prosecutor. Anita leaned forward. What if I told you I have records from the mission school, land deed transfers, 12 properties, all with the same surveyor, all resulting in foreclosure by Caldwell's bank? Webb's eyes sharpened. You have these records? Copies, hidden. She paused. And we have something else, the surveyor's payment ledger, taken from the land office. Stolen? Borrowed. Her smile was thin. My father's warriors are very good at borrowing. Webb sat back, thought. Sam could see him calculating risks and legal angles. If you testify to that, Webb said slowly, you'll be admitting to theft, and you'll be putting yourself at risk from every white man in the territory who thinks you're the enemy. I know. And you, Bridger. Webb turned to Sam. If you stand with her in court, you'll lose whatever goodwill you have left. The town will turn on you completely. Caldwell will paint you as a traitor and an Apache sympathizer. Even if we win, you'll be branded for life. Sam touched the necklace at his chest, felt the beadwork, thought about 8 years of work and a debt he couldn't pay and a banker who'd smile while stealing everything. I'll testify, Sam said. Webb nodded. Then we do this right. Public hearing. Full documentation. I'll subpoena the surveyor, force him to explain every property transfer. If he cracks, and men like that usually do, we can bring down Caldwell's whole operation. When? Anita asked. 1 week. I'll schedule it at the land office. Make it official. He stood. In the meantime, keep your heads down. Don't give Caldwell any reason to move against you before we're ready. The warriors on the ridges might make that difficult, Murphy said. Webb glanced toward the hills. They protecting you? Yes, Sam said. Good. You're going to need it. The day before the hearing, Sam walked to Rebecca's grave. It sat 20 yards from the windmill, marked by a simple granite stone he'd carved himself. The letters were rough, but deep. Rebecca Ann Bridger, 1840-1868. Beloved wife. He'd buried her here because she'd loved this spot. Said the sound of the windmill turning was peaceful, like a heartbeat, like the land itself breathing. The windmill hadn't turned in weeks. The silence felt wrong. Sam knelt on the hard ground. His knee pressed into the dry grass, feeling every stone beneath. The earth smelled like dust and old roots in the faint memory of water. "Don't know if you can hear me," he said to the stone, "but I need to talk this through." The wind picked up, pushing through the dead grass. It sounded like whispers, like voices he couldn't quite make out. "I'm about to lose everything," Sam continued. "The ranch. The respect of every white man in the territory. Maybe my life if things go bad enough." He touched the granite. It was rough under his palm, warm from the sun. "And I keep thinking, what would you tell me to do?" Rebecca had been practical, smart. She'd have seen through Caldwell's fraud in a heartbeat, but she'd also been cautious, careful about making enemies. "The safe thing is to walk away," Sam said. "Sign the deed over. Take whatever deal Caldwell offers, live somewhere else, start over." He paused. "But that means 12 other families stay ruined, means the Apache lose their water rights, means letting a thief win because he's got the law on his side." His throat tightened. "And it means I become the kind of man who looks at wrong and does nothing, the kind who saves his own skin and lets others burn." Footsteps approached from behind, soft, careful. Sam didn't turn. "I know you're there." Tyanita came and stood beside the grave. She looked down at the stone, reading the name and dates. "She was young," Tyanita said. 28, died trying to bring our son into the world." Sam's voice was flat, empty. "Baby didn't make it either. I buried them together. I am sorry. It was a long time ago. Time does not heal some wounds. It only teaches us to carry them differently." Tyanita knelt beside him. The movement was graceful despite her height. "My mother died when I was 12. White man's disease. Smallpox. It swept through our camp like fire through dry grass. Killed 23 people in 2 weeks. Sam looked at her, saw the old grief in her eyes, the kind that never really left. "The white doctor came after," Tyanita continued. "Said he was sorry. Said if we had been living closer to the fort, he could have helped sooner. But we were not welcome near the fort, not until we were dying. And by then, sorry did not bring my mother back. That's not fair. No, but it is truth." She touched the earth beside the grave. "You gave me water because I was thirsty. Not because I was Apache or white or Christian or anything else. Just because I was human and needed help." That's different." "No, it is the same." Her voice was firm. "You already made your choice when you gave me water. Now you must choose again. Silence or voice. Safety or truth." Sam looked at the grave, at the windmill, at the land he'd worked for 8 years, everything he had left of the life he'd built with Rebecca. "If I do this," he said quietly, "I lose it all." "Yes. And if I don't, you lose yourself." Tyanita stood. "And that is worse." Sam stayed kneeling for another moment. Then he stood, his joints protesting. He reached up and pulled the beaded necklace from beneath his shirt, let it hang visible against his chest, blue and white beadwork catching the afternoon sun. "You ready?" Tyanita asked. "No." Sam looked toward town, 2 hours south. "But I'm going anyway." They rode into town near sunset, Sam and Tyanita together. Murphy followed 20 yards back, the three of them moving slow down the main street. People stopped to stare, pointed, whispered. Sam kept the necklace visible, kept his eyes forward. His heart hammered, but his hands stayed steady on the reins. The militia was waiting in front of the saloon. 8 men, armed. They spread out across the street, blocking the way forward. Crawford stood in the center. Behind him, partially hidden in the saloon doorway, stood Hiram Caldwell. The banker's face was calm, confident, like a man watching a play he'd already seen the ending to. "That's far enough, Bridger," Crawford called out. Sam stopped his horse. "I'm just passing through." Wearing that?" Crawford gestured at the necklace. "You're making a statement, and we got a statement to make back." The militiamen shifted. Rifle barrels caught the last of the sunlight. Sam heard hammers cock. The sound was sharp, final. "You got a choice to make," Crawford said. "Right here, right now. You can take off that Apache trash and renounce what you've been doing. Publicly. Or you can keep it on and be branded a traitor to every white person in this territory." That's not a choice," Sam said. "That's a threat. Call it what you want." Crawford spat into the dirt. "But you're going to answer, right now. Whose side are you on?" Sam felt every eye on him, felt the weight of the moment pressing down. This was it, the point of no return. Once he spoke, there was no taking it back. He touched the necklace, felt the careful stitching, thought about a dying woman by his well, about 12 families who'd lost their homes, about a banker who smiled while stealing. "I stand with the truth," Sam said. His voice carried clear and steady. "Hiram Caldwell moved boundary stakes to steal land. From me, from the Apache, from 12 other ranchers. He paid a surveyor $50 per property to forge the documents, and I've got proof. The street went dead silent. Caldwell stepped out of the saloon doorway. His face had gone tight. Dangerous. You're making a mistake, Sam, he said quietly. A mistake you won't survive. Maybe. But at least I'll die honest. You'll die alone, a voice called out from Sam's left. He ain't alone. Murphy rode forward, stopped beside Sam. His rifle rested across his saddle, not aimed but ready. Nor friendless, Reverend Thomas said, walking out from the church steps. He carried no weapon, just his Bible. But he stood in the street between Sam and the militia, like he was daring them to shoot through him. Crawford looked at Caldwell. The banker's jaw was clenched so tight Sam could see the muscle jumping. This isn't over, Caldwell said. You'll see me in court. If you survive the night. He looked at the militia. Let them pass, for now. The men parted reluctantly, created a gap just wide enough for the horses. Sam rode through, Murphy and Tyanita flanking him. Thomas walked alongside until they reached the edge of town. You just made powerful enemies, Thomas said quietly. I know. Good. Means you're doing something right. The preacher smiled. I'll testify at the hearing. About what I've seen. What I've heard. Won't carry much legal weight, but it'll put my voice on record. Appreciate it. Thomas nodded and turned back toward the church. Sam rode north as darkness fell. Behind them, the town lights flickered on one by one. Ahead, the ridges were dark. But Sam knew the warriors were there, watching, waiting. The necklace hung heavy on his chest, the weight of a choice he couldn't undo. The land office was packed, every chair taken, people standing along the walls, more pressed against the windows outside, trying to see through the glass. Sam sat at a table near the front, Tyanita beside him. Murphy stood behind them. The beaded necklace hung visible on Sam's chest. No one had tried to make him remove it. Judge Webb sat behind a makeshift bench, really just the land registry desk moved to face the room. His gavel rested beside his hand. The American flag hung on the wall behind him, faded and dust-covered. The air smelled like nervous sweat and old paper and tobacco smoke trapped in fabric. Someone had opened the windows, but it didn't help. Too many bodies pressed too close together. Caldwell sat across the aisle with two lawyers flanking him, Eastern men in expensive suits. They looked bored, confident, like this was already decided. Judge Webb called the hearing to order. The gavel cracked once against the desk. The sound cut through the murmur like a blade. This is a formal inquiry into property boundary disputes, Webb said. His voice carried despite not being raised. Specifically, the survey and deed for the Bridger Ranch and 12 similar properties in this territory. He looked directly at Caldwell. Mr. Caldwell, you have representatives here? One of the lawyers stood. We do, Your Honor, and we move for immediate dismissal. The survey in question was properly filed and recorded. Mr. Bridger's deed is legal and binding. Noted. Motion denied. Webb gestured to Sam. Bridger has presented evidence suggesting fraudulent alteration of survey boundaries. We'll hear that evidence. He turned to Tyanita. Miss, I don't believe I caught your full name. Tyanita, daughter of Chief Naichi of the Chiricahua Apache. The room erupted in whispers. Webb cracked the gavel again. Miss Tyanita claims to have documentation predating American settlement, a Spanish land grant from 1752. Webb looked at her. You have this document? Yes. She stood and walked to the desk, placed the parchment in front of the judge. The paper crackled as Webb unrolled it. He studied it for a long moment, his fingers tracing the careful script. The smell of old parchment filled the space around the desk. Musty, delicate, ancient. This appears authentic, Webb said. But I don't read Spanish. Can you translate? I can. Tyanita's voice was steady, clear. It is a treaty written by Franciscan priest Father Ignacio de la Cruz. It grants permanent water rights to Apache people for 3 springs and 2 wells. In exchange, Spanish settlers receive safe passage and trade agreements. She pointed to specific sections as she read. The boundaries are marked by stone markers placed at cardinal directions from the well known as agua, limpia, clean water. The well sits 170 varas north of the Red Rock Formation, 50 varas west of 3 cottonwood trees, and is marked by limestone boundaries carved with the cross of Christ in the year of our Lord, 1752. And you're claiming this well is the same well on the Bridger property? I am. We found the boundary stone, buried but intact. She looked at the judge. The Spanish measurements place the well inside both Apache treaty land and Mr. Bridger's purchased property, which means Mr. Caldwell's survey claiming the well is outside Mr. Bridger's boundary is fraudulent. Caldwell's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is absurd. Spanish land grants have no legal standing under American law. The Mexican-American War and subsequent treaties invalidated all previous claims. Not quite. Webb's voice was dry. Spanish grants that were properly registered were grandfathered and under American territorial law. If this grant describes the same well, it has standing. He looked toward the back of the room. I want physical evidence. The boundary stone mentioned. The door opened. Chief Naichi walked in. The crowd pulled back like he was fire. Whispers turned to gasps. Hands moved toward weapons that weren't there. The judge had ordered all firearms left outside. The chief walked forward with the same measured authority Sam had seen at his ranch. He carried something wrapped in cloth. Behind him, 2 warriors followed. They carried something heavier between them. Naichi stopped in front of the judge's desk, unwrapped the cloth, an iron surveyor's stake, shiny, new, with 1874 stamped into the metal. He set it on the desk, then nodded to the warriors. They lifted their burden onto the desk beside the stake. A limestone block, weathered, ancient, and carved deep into its face. A cross. Below the cross, 1752. The room went silent. Webb stood to examine both items. He ran his fingers over the carved stone, over the iron stake. The contrast was impossible to miss. This stone was buried at the location described in the Spanish grant? He asked. Yes, Tayanita said. And this stake? Found 50 yards east of the stone, marking Mr. Caldwell's claimed boundary line. Webb sat back down, looked at Caldwell. Your surveyor placed these stakes? Under proper legal authority, the lawyer said quickly. I want to hear from the surveyor himself. Webb gestured to the bailiff. Call Elias Knott. The bailiff stepped outside. A moment later, Knott entered. His face was pale. Sweat darkened his collar despite the cool morning. His hands shook as he approached the front. Mr. Knott? Webb's voice was flat, professional. You conducted the survey for the Bridger property in 1874? I did. Knott's voice was barely audible. And you placed the iron stakes marking the boundaries? Yes. Were those stakes placed according to the original land measurements, or were they moved? The question hung in the air. Knott's eyes darted to Caldwell, to the lawyers, to the door, like he was calculating his chances of running. Mr. Knott, Webb said quietly, you're under oath, and I have evidence here suggesting a pattern of boundary alterations across 12 properties. All surveyed by you, all resulting in foreclosure by Mr. Caldwell's bank. He leaned forward. I'm giving you one chance to tell the truth. Did you move those stakes? Knott's face crumpled. Yes. The room exploded. Webb cracked the gavel 3 times before order returned. Explain, Webb ordered. Caldwell. Knott's voice broke. Started again. Caldwell paid me $50 per property to adjust the survey boundaries. Said it was legal. Said he was just correcting errors from previous surveys. But there were no errors. He told me exactly where to move the stakes. Always east. Always just far enough to put a well or a water source outside the owner's land. How many properties? 12, including Mr. Bridger's. Knott was crying now. I have a family. He said if I didn't help him, he'd foreclose on my house. Make sure I never worked again. Webb turned to Caldwell. Do you deny these allegations? Caldwell stood slowly. His face was calm. Too calm. Judge, this man is clearly lying under duress. He's been threatened by Apache warriors. His testimony is... I have his ledger. Murphy stood and walked forward, placed the leather-bound book on the desk. Took it from the land office. Every payment logged. 12 properties. $50 each. Elias Knott's signature on every survey. Webb opened the ledger, paged through it. His jaw tightened with each entry he read. Mr. Caldwell, he said finally, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and illegal seizure of property. Bailiff, take him into custody. Caldwell's lawyers shot to their feet, protesting. But Caldwell just stood there, staring at Sam. His eyes were cold, calculating. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Webb replied. It is. The bailiff moved forward with iron shackles. The sound of them locking around Caldwell's wrists was sharp, final. Webb turned to Sam. Bridger, your deed is hereby confirmed as valid under both American and Spanish land law. The foreclosure is voided. He looked at Tayanita. And the Apache water rights described in the Spanish grant are recognized by this court. Both parties will have shared access to the well in perpetuity. He cracked the gavel one last time. This hearing is adjourned. The paperwork took 3 hours. Judge Webb drafted the joint land treaty at the desk while the crowd slowly dispersed. Some looked satisfied, others angry, most just confused about what had happened and what it meant. Sam signed his name at the bottom of the document. The ink smelled sharp and permanent. Then Chief Naichi made his mark. A symbol Sam didn't recognize, but that carried weight nonetheless. Webb witnessed both signatures and stamped the paper with his official seal. The wax was red, like blood, like the foreclosure notice had been. But this time it meant something different. Samuel Bridger retains full ownership of his ranch. Webb read aloud for the record. The Apache people of the Chiricahua Band received permanent water passage rights and shared access to the well-known historically as Agua Limpia. Both parties acknowledged the other's legitimate claim. Both parties agreed to maintain the water source for mutual benefit. He looked up at Sam and Naiche. This is legal and binding. Anyone who interferes with either party's water rights will answer to this court. Naiche spoke in Apache. Tayanita translated. My father says the water was always meant to be shared. Now the white man's law agrees with what the earth already knew. Webb allowed himself a small smile. That's about right. Outside, Murphy was waiting by the horses. So was Reverend Thomas, and 3 other men Sam recognized. Ranchers who'd lost their properties to Caldwell over the past 2 years. Judge says our deeds will be corrected too, one of them said. His name was Peters. He had 5 children and a wife who'd been living in his brother's barn since the foreclosure. Says we can reclaim our land, file for damages. Caldwell's going to prison, Murphy said. Federal prison, fraud against this many properties, makes it a territorial matter. They'll send him east. Sam felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion finally catching up to him. We should get back, he said to Tayanita. They rode north together. The afternoon sun was hot on their backs. By the time they reached the ranch, Sam's shirt was soaked with sweat and dust clung to everything. The warriors were waiting, not on the ridges this time, in his yard, 50 of them, maybe more. They dismounted and were standing in groups, talking quietly among themselves. Chief Naiche rode forward and addressed his people. He spoke for several minutes. Sam couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. Formal, important. The kind of speech a leader makes when something fundamental has changed. When Naiche finished, the warriors raised their weapons skyward, not in threat, in salute. Then 4 of them walked to a wagon Sam hadn't noticed before. They pulled back the canvas covering. Metal gleamed underneath, windmill parts, new vanes, fresh gears, bolts and washers and everything needed for a complete repair. My father says the broken thing must be fixed, Tayanita said. Systems work when people fix them together. Sam looked at the parts, at the warriors, at his broken windmill standing silent against the sky. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, just work. They worked through the afternoon into evening. Sam climbed the ladder with tools while warriors handed up parts. Murphy helped from the ground, calling out measurements and adjustments. Even Tayanita climbed up, her height making it easier to reach the upper mechanisms. The smell of machine oil mixed with sweat and dust. Metal scraped against metal as the new gears slid into place. Sam's hands worked by instinct, muscle memory from years of smaller repairs. But this time, he wasn't alone. The sun was setting when they finished. Sam tightened the last bolt and climbed down. His shoulders burned. His back ached. He was 58 years old and felt every year of it. Chief Naiche walked to the windmill and placed both hands on the wooden frame. He spoke one word. The wind picked up. The vanes began to turn, slow at first, then faster. The gears caught and held. The pump engaged with a deep, satisfying thunk. Water rushed through the pipes, splashed into the trough below, clear, cold, endless. The cattle moved forward immediately, pushing their muzzles into the water, drinking deep. The sound of it was simple, perfect. Sam walked to the trough, dipped his hands in the flow. The water was cold enough to make his fingers ache. He brought it to his face, washing away dust and sweat and the weight of the past weeks. When he looked up, Naiche was standing beside him. The chief dipped his own hands in the water, drank, then poured some onto the earth at his feet, the water ceremony. But simpler this time, less formal, just an acknowledgement of what water was supposed to be. Shared, free, belonging to everyone who needed it. Tayanita approached with a cup, Sam's cup, the one he'd used to give her water that first day. She filled it from the trough and held it out. Sam took it, drank. The water tasted the same as it always had, clean, pure, like life itself. Tayanita drank after him, then passed the cup to her father. He drank and passed it to the nearest warrior. The cup moved through the group, hand to hand, everyone drinking from the same source. When it came back to Sam, he held it for a moment, felt the worn metal. The dents and scratches from 8 years of use. You gave water to one thirsty woman, Tayanita said quietly. Now water flows for everyone. This is what mercy does. The windmill turned above them, steady and true. The sound of it was like breathing, like the land itself coming back to life. Around the ranch, warriors began setting up camp. Not as guards this time, as guests, as neighbors. The sun dropped below the western ridge. The first stars appeared. And for the first time in weeks, Sam felt something close to peace. Now, I reckon most folks back east would read about Sam Bridger and figure he was a fool, gave water to an enemy, stood with Apache against his own kind, risked hanging for a piece of paper written in a language he couldn't read. But out here in the territories, where the dust don't settle easy and the law is only as good as the men enforcing it, Sam understood something simpler. Water don't belong to whoever builds the fence. It belongs to whoever's thirsty. That Spanish grant from 1752 proved what the Apache had been saying all along. The land was never America's to sell in the first place. And Caldwell's fraud proved what Sam always suspected. When powerful men control the ink and the surveyors, even honest deeds can become lies. But mercy? Mercy's got no boundaries to move, no stakes to forge. Sam gave 1 cup of water to a dying woman, and it opened a well deep enough to save them both. 3 months later, the windmill still turns. Sam tends his cattle, and twice a week, Apache families stop at the well on their way to summer grounds. Tyanita teaches at the mission school now, showing young ones how to read land grants in 3 languages. Chief Naichi calls Sam brother in his tongue. The town calls him the honest one, though some still spit when they say it. And every morning at dawn, Sam climbs that windmill ladder, checks the gears, and listens to the metal turn smooth and true. Systems work when people fix them together. Rebecca would have been proud. Her grave sits by the windmill still, and the grass grows green around it now that the water flows steady. Some legacies are built on land, some are built on honor. Sam Bridger figured out they're the same thing if you're willing to share the well.